In case you have been foolish enough to fall for the MAGA propaganda and rhetoric suggesting that they're only really going after violent criminals in America who are undocumented immigrants, then allow this story to prove to you once and for all, amongst, of course, all of the other stories that have existed this entire time, that that is complete and utter crap. Trump immigration raids snag U.S. citizens, including Native Americans, raising racial profiling fears. A U.S. veteran and Navajo residents have been asked for identification. Critics are complaining of racial profiling as raids and deportations increase. American citizens, including citizens of native tribal nations, have been pulled into the immigration operations. Those who are getting caught in ICE raids are being targeted because of their race or skin color, according to witnesses. The Navajo Nation office was flooded with calls from tribal members living off reservation, with many reporting being questioned about their identity by ICE officers. Questioning of Navajo Nation citizens, who are American citizens, by ICE has been problematic enough that Navajo President Ibu Nigrin took to the airwaves to address it. He said he had received amounts of negative and sometimes traumatizing encounters between ICE and Navajo Nation citizens. He advised Navajo Nation's residents to carry identification, driver's licenses, and their certificate of Indian blood. NBC News reached out to ICE regarding the detaining and questioning. Detaining is what is happening. It took them a while to use that word, but detaining and questioning of Navajo Nation citizens and complaints of racial profiling, and has not yet received a response. One of the employees detained and questioned by ICE at a seafood wholesaler during an immigration raid in New Jersey was a U.S. citizen and military veteran. But detained and questioned by ICE as a U.S. citizen and military veteran. Newark Mayor denounced the ICE raid, saying the military veteran suffered the indignity of having the legitimacy of his military documentation questioned. Regarding the raid, ICE stated they may encounter U.S. citizens while conducting field work and may request identification to establish an individual's identity. You do not need to provide any answers to that identification. You do not need to identify yourself. You do not need to comply with this. The seafood wholesaler's owner in New York said that his warehouse manager, who was also detained, was Puerto Rican. Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory and its residents are U.S. citizens. It looks to me like they were specifically going after certain kinds of people, not every kind, because they did not ask me for documentation for my American workers, Portuguese workers, or white workers, Genoto told the station. Now, of course, there are undocumented immigrants from all over the planet in the United States of America, with all sorts of different skin tones, all sorts of different races and ethnic groups they belong to. But of course, when the Trump administration is talking about ICE raids and deportations and violent crime, and they're not sending their bests, they're rapists, they're thieves, and some I assume are good people, of course they are talking about Hispanic-looking people. Of course, there is a specific look of person that they want their bigoted cult followers, which includes ICE officers and police, to imagine when they are on the prowl conducting these raids or talking about these deportation campaigns. There is a specific type of person, a specific stereotype they have in mind, and they are on the look for that stereotype specifically. Of course, it's not about lawfulness. Of course, it's not about, unprejudiced, making sure documentations are in order. Of course, it's not about that. It never has been about that. It is about getting brown people out of the country. That's what it's always been about. It has always been about fascism. It has always been about white nationalism. Don't let them lie to you and pretend that that's not the case. We have countless examples, like the one I'm going through right now, that shows this. More deportations worries over increased profiling. ICE has stepped up arrests and deportations since Trump took office. While he had said he would prioritize violent criminals, his border czar, Tom Homan, also said this week that arrests of undocumented immigrants without criminal convictions, which the administration calls collateral arrests, would occur, and they have already occurred in large number. On Sunday, almost half of the people arrested, 48%, had nonviolent offenses on their record or people who had not committed any offense. Again, what I just said. It's also worth mentioning, as I ranted in my previous section, that going after those who have been convicted of crimes means going after those who have already made their way through the criminal justice system, who have already either done their time, paid their fine, did their community service, whatever it was that the courts had decided was the way that they should pay back society, pay back the community. If they are free and out and about, they have already served that punishment for the crimes they are convicted of. So using criminal convictions as an excuse to justify targeting them, you're going after those who have in the past committed crime, who have already served their punishments for said crime, and yet you're coming after them for additional punishments. There are some definite constitutional arguments you could make to counter that tactic, but regardless, those ICE raids are going to continue, and as we've seen, while violent criminals might be their stated priority, they are going after everyone. As we saw, almost half of the people arrested on Sunday had nonviolent offenses on their record or were people who had not committed any offense. Being in the US without legal status is a civil violation. Entering the country without inspection between ports of entry or based on false statements, what is considered a legal entry, is a misdemeanor. Re-entering or attempting to re-enter is a felony. That's actually a good distinction of exactly what different illegal immigrants, classifications are. The criteria for who is arrested and deported will soon be expanded, however. A bill awaiting Trump's signature, as we have covered in a previous video, the Lake and Riley Act, will allow the arrest and detention of people who are not legally in the country and have been charged. They do not have to be convicted with burglary, theft, larceny, shoplifting, or crimes that lead to death or serious bodily injury. They do not have to be convicted. 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 Charged, i.e. suspected of burglary, theft, larceny, shoplifting. You're suspected of taking $20 from a convenience store, $20 worth of goods from a convenience store. You're suspected of it, detained. When you don't have enforcement priorities, everyone is subject to detention. It also creates the situation that leads to increased profiling. How do you tell that someone does not have legal status in the country or is in the process of seeking legal status? You can't tell that by looking at someone, but it will create conditions where there will be profiling of communities, immigrant communities, and communities of color. The mass deportation efforts may soon run into funding realities. Yes, because as we saw in a previous segment, it took about 10 ICE officers hours to make one arrest because it is such a grotesquely inefficient system. Immigration advocates were trying to make sure immigrants know what to do if they are caught in the crackdown. Our best defense in this moment is people knowing their rights. Stay calm, don't lie, remain silent. Don't consent to the search. That is 4 statements that are probably your best friends right now. Stay calm, don't lie, remain silent, do not consent to the search. Do not open the door without a judicial warrant, as well as making sure that it is signed by a judge. They can and will lie. They will show you false paperwork. They will show you an unsigned warrant. Do not open the door without a judicial warrant signed by a judge. During the campaign, Trump frequently alluded to mass deportations carried out by Dwight D. Eisenhower in the 50s under the label Operation Wetback, a racist term used against mostly Mexican immigrants. U.S. citizens of Mexican descent were also expelled from the country during that operation and have been expelled throughout ICE's existence. Very short existence, by the way. Trump has said his mass deportations would be larger than Eisenhower's, but there have been more recent arrests and deportations of American citizens. From October 1st, 2015 to March 2020, ICE arrested 674 potential U.S. citizens, detained 121, and removed 70. This was during Trump's first term, which he promises to vastly outdo this time around. Okay? The GAO said at the time that ICE had conflicting policies on questioning U.S. citizens and did not track its encounters with U.S. citizens well. The GAO also found that ICE issued detainers, asking a local jurisdiction to hold a suspected undocumented immigrant who had been arrested in another crime for at least 895 potential U.S. citizens during that period. It eventually canceled about 3/4 of the detainers, but that is not 100%. Well, there you have it. We, of course, have been saying this for a very, very, very long time. It's not just violent undocumented immigrants. It's not just those out there doing egregious things. It's not just those who are committing even petty crime while undocumented. And it's not even necessarily just those who are undocumented and otherwise not causing any problems. It's anyone and everyone who matches the description and or pisses off the wrong ICE officer. And that has been the case since ICE has existed. That has existed since before ICE existed. That was the case back during Dwight D. Eisenhower's day, as the article mentions, okay? And it is, of course, what is happening right now. Anyone and everyone who matches the physical description of those who they are racially profiling is at risk. So, if this is true for you, if you fit that profile, you need to know your rights. You need to know to use your Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent. Do not speak. If you choose to speak, which I already said don't do, but if you choose to speak, make sure you do not lie about anything. Anything and everything that you say that could be determined to be a lie will be used against you in a court of law if they want to take it that far. If you even get a day in court, which they're working to, avoid altogether. Due process, who heard of it, right? So basically, just don't speak. If you do speak, don't lie. But also, if you speak only the truth, you could also be told you are lying and it not matter. So don't speak. Simply do not speak. Do not let them into your house without a warrant signed by a judge. Okay? Do not answer questions by them. You do not need to identify yourself, okay? Anyone else who doesn't match these racial profiling, physical descriptors that we all know they're going for, you are the ones that can maybe, in specific circumstances where it is necessary, run some interference, okay? It's still a really bad idea to talk to ICE officers or police in general. However, if you are in a situation where it would be incredibly useful for certain people to have a few extra moments to possibly make an escape, move out of a particular building, etc., then running interference and asking the ICE officer questions, wasting their time, etc., could be useful. It is naturally dangerous. Interacting with any police official whatsoever in the United States of America is always dangerous because they can gun you down in the street without any provocation whatsoever, without fear of any sort of criminal punishment for those actions. So it's always dangerous. But if you look like me, there are a number of actions you can take to, again, in certain situations, provide assistance. The most you can do to provide assistance is to simply provide help and resources available to those who are going to be victims of this profiling. And also getting organized locally, as we always say. That is the number one most important thing.